Okay.
It died.
Let your spirit run free along the old Black Nile.
Good afternoon, Washington, D.C. Good afternoon. This is Tony Browder, and welcome to this special edition of the Browder File Show. And we're doing something special all day long. We are partnering with Friends of the Congo during a special day of programming focusing on justice, inclusion, dignity in a free Congo. As you all should know, this is Congo Week in the Nation, and this is Congo Day 2025 here in Washington, D.C. This event is sponsored by Friends of the Congo, along with our dear friend Moiza with Africa Now. Friends of the Congo was founded in 2004 to raise awareness of the African Central Nation, formerly known as Zaire, now known as the Democratic Republic of the Congo, or simply the Congo. Here's some information about the Congo that I want us to consider. Congo is the second largest country in Africa and the 11th largest country in the world. Congo has the world's second largest rainforest, second only to the Amazon. But here's some other information that hurts the heart, that hits the heart. 50% of enslaved Africans were said to have been stolen out of the Congo Basin. The Congo produces 70% of the world's cobalt, an essential mineral for all electronics, for computers and cell phones, and batteries for electric vehicles. Without this essential mineral, we wouldn't be having this conversation right now. So the world needs Congo. Congo, like most of Africa, has been under siege by foreign nations. Thus, 80% of the cobalt that is extracted from the Congo is refined in China. So if people come into Africa, they take the minerals. They've taken the people, they now are taking the minerals, transporting them around the world, processing them, and then making billions of dollars off of the riches that is mined from the African soil. The Congo region is the heart of Africa and was essential to the development of Europe and the West, who all benefited from the extraction or the trafficking of Africans for 4 centuries and the extraction of African minerals for 1.5 centuries. Now, some of you all may have heard of the Berlin Conference, which was held, of course, in Berlin, where the name came from 1884 to 1885. But the Berlin Conference was also known as the Congo Conference, because the European nations who met at this event gave Congo to King Leopold of Belgium for his personal exploitation, which he exploited from 1885 until 1908 for 23 blankety blank years. I can't curse on the air, but I want to, I'm telling you. And during that time, Leopold made over $1 billion in today's currency. And the extraction of this mineral cost the lives of an estimated 10 million African men, women, and children. You know, I really, sadly, I didn't become aware of the Congo until the 1980s when a buddy of mine showed me this book that had a photograph of the Congolese people who did not meet their quota to be extracted from whatever they were doing. And as a result, their hands were cut off. So I've got several photos of men, women, and children with stumps. But look, you all know that we're here in the middle of a pledge drive, and I can't raise this money by myself. So I had to call in the troops. No, I had to call in the general, not the troops. What am I talking about? I had to call in the general. So I'm pleased to have help me pitch today the interim general manager of WPFW, Miyuki Williams. So Miyuki, can you please come forward and encourage our listeners to support this station and support this program?
Well,
Of course, and I thank you so much for having me. I just wanted just you to remind the folks that you're giving all this riveting information that as they're listening, they're going to understand what they're investing in. We're trying to get $1,000 between now and 6 o'clock. We can do that with all the people who value Anthony Browder's insight, his information, his facts, his knowledge, his wisdom, and everything else, how he brings in various guests and talks on these various topics. So I just want to remind folks that it's about $1,000 we need between now and 6. The number to call is 1-800-222-9739. If you're listening online, you just go to the Donate Now button. Hopefully you're listening on the new WPFW app, and you can just go right to Donate Now. And but if not, if you're listening on computer, it's WPFWFM.org or Cash App. A lot of people are doing Cash App to us, Tony. Of all,
Good.
Lance had a great idea on Saturday. He said, of all the thousands of you listen to me, if everyone just gave $5, we'd be fine. So he had an onslaught of $5 pledges and more. Some people gave more, but it's his Cash App is $ WPFWFM, and whatever amount you want, please indicate which show that you are um, trying to support. 202-588-9739, 1-800-222-9739. And I'll be quiet. I just wanted to, at the top of the hour, to let people know what we're working for.
He's on the phone.
Okay. Well, listen. Thank you so much, Mayuki. And if I can borrow a page from Lance, well, look, I got folk who know me, who like me, who love the station. Um, I want to step on Lance's line. Everybody who loves what I do, who loves what WPF does, $5, Cash App. What's that Cash App number again, Mayuki?
It's $ WPFWFM. And then they have to put a Browder Files or Tony Browder or something like that.
Well, you can do that if you want to. Just send the money to the station. I mean, it's all going in the same pot. So I
Yes.
don't care. Well, I do care. Let me back up because I would make my goal. I do care, but I really care more for the station. Let me not be selfish. I care more for the station. And we're experiencing a time that I thought I would never experience, where we are under assault like never before. Assault is relentless, and it's on all levels. And now is not the time to sit back and wait. Now is the time for action. And I've said on several occasions that that we're going to have to be on point for the rest of our lives. We cannot take a breath. We cannot rest. We cannot sit on the fence because the work that needs to be done has to be done for the benefit of the 2 to 3 generations that are coming behind us. It's that serious. It is crunch time, and PFW has played a pivotal role in my life. I've shared with folk on the airways before that the very first radio interview I did was on WPFW. The very first lecture I did in Washington, D.C. was at WPFW when they were in Chinatown. So I'm tethered to this station, and it means a lot to me that PFW is able to exist and that you all have the compassion, the consciousness to be able to create a special day of programming for the Congo. You're not going to get this anywhere else. So, they say you never miss your water till the well runs dry. I don't want that to be the case for WPFW. This well needs to be constantly replenished, and we are the ones who do it. We do it many different ways. We do it many different levels. $5 pledge right now is cool. $100 is cooler. $1,000 is the coolest yet.
Be on the lookout for Paul. Oh, there you
Yeah,
go.
Paul is in, and we are ready to rock and roll. So I've got this phenomenal team working in the background, making sure that everything happens. And as they say, it makes teamwork to make the show work. I don't believe in dreaming. Dreaming is for people who are asleep. We have to be awake. We got to be fully woke. We've got to be moving constantly to get things done. So if you all don't mind, I want to finish my wrap up of the Congo, my overview of the Congo, because my guest is here, a guest who I haven't seen in a long time, and I'm looking forward to talking with him. So I talked about the Berlin Conference, which was also known as the Congo Conference, and King Leopold made a ton of money at the cost of an estimated 10 million African lives. And when I heard about the 10 million African lives, I said, everybody is upset because of what Adolf Hitler did, killing 6 million people. But nobody talks about what Leopold did. I was in England over the summer, and right near on the banks of the Thames River is a statue of King Leopold. So these folk are in cahoots with the mass murderer, one of the greatest mass murderers known to mankind. Kwame Nkrumah, the first president of a free Africa, a president of Ghana. Sheikh Diop, one of the most brilliant scholars the world has ever known, both envisioned Congo as a capital of a United States of Africa because it was so mineral rich. And so my guest today will help us understand what Frantz Fanon meant when he said that the fate of us all is at stake in the Congo. My guest today is Paul Pumphrey, who is the co-founder of Friends of the Congo. So Paul, welcome to the Browder File Show, and thank you for helping us celebrate Congo Day on WPFW. You got to unmute yourself, brother. Unmute yourself, please. Is that little button in the lower left-hand corner? Hit that, and we'll be ready to have a conversation. There you go. Paul, welcome, man. How are you? Oh, I still can't hear you. I still can't hear you. Let's make sure. See, you have your headset on. Make sure everything is. There we go. I got you now. Hey, man, good to see you.
Can you hear me now?
I can hear you now, brother.
Okay,
Yes.
very good, very good.
So how you doing, brother?
I'm doing well. I'm glad to be able to be here with you.
Yeah.
One of my mentors, a person that I have great respect for, and I enjoy listening to your show every week.
Well, thank you, brother. And I do have to say that, I became aware of you through a mutual acquaintance of ours, Ambrose Lane. You were a frequent guest on Ambrose's show. And that's how I came to be aware of you and the phenomenal work that you've been doing for decades. Now, you're one of the co-founders of Friends of the Congo, which was founded in 2004. You and Maurice. So what brought this coalition together of minds to commemorate, to establish the month of October to help us remember the value of the Congo in our minds?
Okay. Well, right around about 2002 or 2003, I read an article in the Washington Post that at that time they were talking about 1.5 to 2 million people who were killed in the eastern part of the Congo, around the area where the minerals were, such as coltan and cobalt, which was used in the electronic industry. And that gave me a flashback to the days when I was involved with the struggle around Southern Africa. And I said to myself, there's a need to do a major informational campaign in the US because we cannot depend on the usual US media, the television networks, the newspapers and magazines, because they are very much controlled by their funders, which are the large multinational corporations that are benefiting from what's going on in places like the Congo. And so I kept looking for someone else that also had been involved with the Congo, and I'm at a UNIA meeting, and who shows up but my old friend Maurice Connie, and he's speaking about the Congo. And I'm like, wow, okay, because Maurice had gone to Africa for a couple of years, and I had lost contact with him. And then I'm saying, oh, okay, so Maurice is working on the Congo. Good. So when he finished speaking, I chased him down in the hallway and I said, Maurice, we need to start a campaign to inform the people of the United States as to what's really happening in the Congo. Because if we don't do that, most people, if you don't know that you have an illness, if you don't have the symptom or whatever, then you're not going to do anything about it. And so I saw that with apartheid back in the 70s when I was co-founder of the anti-apartheid movement USA. Most people, even on college campuses, people studying political science did not know what the word apartheid meant. Okay, and here's apartheid was started way back around 1913. So I'm saying, okay, we're going to have to do an informational campaign. So I invited Maurice to come to an office I was using at the time. And he said, well, there's a sister I'm working with by the name of Carrie Crawford. And she's been involved with me working with him on the Congo. I said, come on, bring as many people as you want to, but we need to get this thing going. And I patterned it behind the program that I was working with during the time of the anti-apartheid movement. and that was that let us go into the community. Let's go to the churches. Let's go to the universities. Let's go to wherever there'll be a group of people interested in hearing what we have to say. And let's begin to get people aware of what's going on, because we can't change U.S. policy if the people in the country don't know what's going on. If you don't know you have cancer, you're not going to do anything about your cancer. And
So Paul, let me ask you a question, man. As I'm listening to you talk, I hear in what you're saying a brother who is an activist at heart, right? A brother who has been involved in setting things right on the African continent. Where did this spirit come from, man? Who in your life is the person that planted this seed of consciousness in your consciousness?
I would say the first person was my mother.
Okay.
And my mother was a woman who grew up in Maryland under segregation. And she was fortunate enough to make it through high school, because most of the people in her community, in the rural community, only went to the Rosenwald School, which meant 6th grade, and then they went out working on the farm.
Mm-hmm.
Her aunt recognized my mother's academic skills, taught my grandfather into having my mother go live with her in Towson. And she sent my mother to a junior high school in Towson, because most of the people in our community only went to the Rosenwald School, which went to the 6th grade, and then you go to work on the farm. When she brought my mother back, she sat down with my grandfather and said, look, you got to keep this young lady in school. And because we lived way out in Montgomery County, the only senior high school was located in Rockville, which was about 18 miles from where we lived. And so my grandfather didn't feel comfortable sending my mother in junior high school on broken down buses, because we got the hand-me-down buses for the Black schools.
Okay.
And so he worked the deal out with my uncle to drive my mother. He drove to DC every morning at about 5:30 in the morning, dropped her off at Georgia and Eastern Avenue, and she caught a streetcar over to Francis Junior High School. Well, of course, she got there so early that she actually took roller skates in the wintertime to roller skate up and down the sidewalk until the school opened to stay warm. So once she finished her junior high school, then she went to the high school in Rockville, like I said, which was about 18 miles from where we lived at the time, where she lived at the time. And then she finished that. The family was working on a farm that was owned by Quakers. And every time there was a school break or a summer break, my mother worked on the farms too.
Mm-hmm.
And when they found out that my mother was interested in pursuing her education to become a school teacher, they helped pitch in to pay for her to go to Bowie State Teachers College. And at that time, Bowie State Teachers College was only a 3-year program, because if you're going to teach in a Black school, all you needed was 2 years beyond high school.
Okay.
So my mother went through her 3rd year, and the end of her 3rd year, Bowie opened up its 4th-year program. So she went back to the 4th-year program, and then World War II happened. And so my father got drafted and sent up to Boston. So my mother went up to Boston, worked up there for 2 years. They wouldn't allow her to teach, so she worked in a boot factory. When they moved back to Maryland, that's when she began to start teaching in segregated schools in Montgomery County. But my mother was always remembered how she got to where she was.
Yeah.
And so she felt a true commitment to giving back to the community. So our house was like somewhat of a grand central station, from the perspective that when people were looking for jobs in DC, the federal government, and they had to do a civil service exam, they always came by our house for my mother to tutor them in English, and I tutored them in math. And so my mother was this person who constantly gave back to the community. And, she saw her role was not to just take the privilege that she went to college and now she made it, so let's move on her own. No, she saw that her role was she got this information to service our community, and that's exactly what she did.
Well, brother, I can say that the spirit of your mother lives on in you, and I know she would be extremely proud of what you've done with your life. That story touches my heart. I'm looking at Miyuki's face, and she's about to tear up. Miyuki is such a sweetheart.
I mean, I'll tell you one last thing about her.
Yes.
And that was the year she passed away. The old Rosenwald School that was in our immediate community had been turned into a rec center. And the county decided to tear down that building and build a new building behind it for a new rec center. And unbeknown to our family, the community called the Department of Recreation and said they had to put my mother's name on that
There you
building.
go. There you go.
And they were like, who? And they kept repeating the name.
There
And
you
so after
go.
they got about 30 or 40 phone calls, they decided they better call our family to find out if we would mind if they put my mother's name on the building. We said we thought it would be an honor. Well, when we actually did the dedication, because they didn't know my mother, they said we could set up the program, just leave a spot for one of their officials to officially dedicate the building. They asked us that we want to do the program inside the building, was in August, or did we want to do it out in the parking lot? And my sister said, do it in the parking lot because we're going to need at least 200 seats. And the woman from the Park Service said, well, you know, I've been dedicating buildings this size in Montgomery County for 20 years, and we've never had more than 25 people show up. And my sister's response was, but you never named it after my mother.
There you go.
So every seat was filled, and people were still standing during that program of dedication in that building. And it just kind of showed how my mother was respected for giving of herself, you know, to the community in every way she could. And so that's the spirit I grew up under. And my sister, my brother, and myself, all three of us have done the same thing. We've given back.
Well, Paul, let me do this. Based on this incredible history that you're sharing with us, I want to dedicate today's show to your mom, because it's that spirit of giving that led to you co-creating Friends of the Congo, that led to so many tens of thousands of people since 2004 becoming aware of the atrocities that have been committed in the Congo and in other parts of Africa. So your mom's spirit, brother, is alive and well, and she deserves to be acknowledged for what she's done, because within the African spirit, it's about speaking the name of your ancestors. Please share with us your mom's name so that
Her
we
name
can
is
acknowledge her.
Mildred Adams Pumphrey.
Mildred Adams Pumphrey. So I thank God for Mildred Adams Pumphrey. I thank God for her dedication to her people, her dedication to her children. And we are now bearing witness to what her spirit, not just what she produced, but what her spirit has produced. And that's the spirit that WPFW offers as well. It's a spirit of people who are connected to something bigger than themselves, people who are selfless, and who extend an invitation for others to latch onto that spirit. You know, take a piece of that spirit, internalize it. And one of the best ways to get a piece of that spirit is to give a piece of your currency, a piece of your pocketbook, because that's what it is. The money is currency, it's energy, it's power, it's spirit. And by you giving to this station, by you supporting this work, it makes it possible for other loving and caring spirits to come and make their stories heard. And we all liberate ourselves. We all free ourselves through a joint effort that is a part of our shared humanity. So this is an opportunity. This is your opportunity. This is your time to connect with this station, to support this station, and to see to it that the spirit of your loved ones lives in your contribution to this station. Right? That's how we make it. That's how we thrive. Yeah, Miyuki, I see you.
No, because I mean, it's so inspirational. The story of Mr. Pumphrey's mother is just so inspirational. Thank you so much for sharing it. Thank you so much for asking what was the seed of his consciousness? How did he develop that consciousness of doing the kind of work that he's done? And he gives it all to his mom, and his mom was a remarkable woman. Thank you so much for sharing that. If you've enjoyed this exchange between Tony Browder is an incredible interviewer. He has a Rolodex of so many amazing people, and Paul Pumphrey is one of them. If you enjoy this, please register your support and appreciation of by calling 202-588-9739 or go to our website at wpfwfm.org. Hopefully you've got our radio app and you can go right to the donate now button. And there's also the option of Cash App. Cash App is $WPFWFM. We've got one person who's already gotten us started. We want to thank a friend out of Suitland, Maryland, who made a very generous pledge and got us started. We now only need $900 between now and 6 o'clock. That is attainable. That is doable. You all know how this works. WPFW is powered by the people, by those who appreciate and understand the work that Mr. Browder does. Please, if you're out there and you're listening, this is a great time for you to register your support. Give an affirmation that you appreciate the university, the work that Dr. I make you a doctor all the time. I know you get upset, but that Professor, Professor Browder presents on a weekly basis. 202-588-9739, 1-800-222-9739.
Okay,
And then we also want to thank Heather Burns, who made a very generous pledge, support the previous show, thanking Katia for all her hard work. We get through this one pledge at a time, one person at a time, $1 at a time, 1 minute at a time. We've got 34 minutes remaining, $900 to go. We can get there with your help. 1-800-222-9739.
So look, I wanna build on the previous show, Willie Jenkins and his recordings of the music from soundtrack to a coup d'etat, an incredible film that came out last year. In 2000, Raoul Peck did a film on Lumumba, and I recall Ambrose discussing that film on his show, and there was a screening of the film and a post-screening discussion that was facilitated by Ambrose, I think at the East Street Theater, somewhere downtown DC. And what I recall, and Paul, I'd like for you to add some insight on this if you can. There's a scene in Raoul Peck's film Lumumba where a CIA official gives a thumbs up for the assassination of Patrice Lumumba. And during the discussion, the post-film discussion, that person who was depicted in the film, that CIA official was there in the audience. And he stood up and said that scene is inaccurate. I was there in the Congo. I was stationed by the CIA, but that scene, that incident never occurred. Now I thought that was very peculiar. And what I noticed even later was that that film, Lumumba, was shown on HBO, and that scene was cut out. So it speaks to me of the power of these nefarious agents who overthrow governments, who assassinate leaders, and who manipulate the media in order to reframe history. But I want to ask you, were you there at that event, or had you ever had a conversation with Ambrose about that incident?
I didn't have a conversation with Ambrose about that incident, but I've had opportunities of speaking not only to Ambrose, but Raoul Peck as well. As you well know, that Raoul Peck is from Haiti. And one of the places I've spent a lot of time in since 1995 is Haiti. And I want to give you a little short piece of information. I helped organize a delegation to Haiti in 1995. And we go down on the first week of June. And of course, US troops, Canadian troops, and French troops all over Port-au-Prince. They kept stopping our vehicles. And so members of the delegations insisted that we meet with the US ambassador. And I was like, oh boy. But we set the meeting up. We went to the US embassy. They put us in a conference room, long table. The delegates sat on both sides of the long table. I sat at the far end. The ambassador came in and he sat at the near end. As they were asking him questions, I was looking at his facial expression, and it became clear to me from his facial expression that this guy was very confident in himself, and he gave an impression of somebody who was probably a CIA agent.
Mm-hmm.
So I put my hand up and I asked him one question. What is your history in the State Department? When he answered that question, he could have very easily have simply said, I work for the CIA. He was in Congo Brazzaville when they led up to a coup d'etat in the Congo Brazzaville. He went to Liberia when they had a coup d'etat in Liberia. Then he goes to South Africa right before Nelson Mandela becomes president, and he gets the white regime to spend all the money in the budget, so the Mandela has to borrow money from international banks, which put all kinds of restrictions on Mandela what he could do as president. He leaves there, he goes to Nigeria. There's a coup d'etat in Nigeria. Then he's sent to Haiti when Aristide returned from a coup d'etat in 1994. Okay, in 1998, I'm back in Haiti. I asked one of my friends, what is this guy up to? Oh, he's not here anymore. Where is he? He's in the Congo. And what is going on in the Congo? An attempted military coup. Okay, they're not successful because Zimbabwe, Namibia, and Angola sent their troops there to defeat Ugandan and Rwandan troops that were in the central part of the Congo. Okay, so He stays on as ambassador and then finally retires from the State Department on January 20th, 2001. Laurent Kabila, who was the president of the Congo at that time, was killed on January 16th, 2001. So 4 days after the president of the Congo is killed, he then retires from the State Department. Now, some people may say that was coincidental. I don't think so. I think this man, and I think many other people who got under the disguise of ambassadors or assistant to the embassies are very specifically sent to these countries.
Absolutely.
Because of this, the United States sees the value of the natural resources in the Congo. And I would like to talk a little bit about that. The Congo is the second in area largest country in Africa, only second to Algeria. 2, it's right on the equator. So it's in the central part of the Congo. 3, it has the second largest rainforest in the world, only second to the Amazon. With its rainfall and fertile land, the Congo can actually produce enough food to feed 9 billion people a year. So one has to ask the question, why is the Congo importing food every year? And the answer is it's very simple. United States has used its control over the government of the Congo to make sure that the people of the Congo are there to dig out the minerals for the international companies, but not to actually process the agriculture that could feed the people of the Congo. So here's a country that can feed 9 billion people a year, has that potential. It's importing food every year. Then you look at another thing about the Congo. The Congo has the second largest and powerful river in the world, the Congolese River. There have been a number of surveys done on that river that says that if they put hydroelectric dams on the Congolese River, they could produce enough electricity to meet the electric needs of the whole continent of Africa for the next 30 years, just off the power of that one river. So again, here you have this country that is blessed and cursed by some of the most valuable minerals in the world today. 2, it has the ability to feed the whole world plus another 2 billion people. 3, it's got the ability with its rainfall on this river, the Congolese River, to produce electricity to meet the electric needs of the whole continent of Africa without burning one drop of oil, one chunk of coal, or even using uranium. And the United States has played the biggest role in preventing this country from doing all 3 of these things. And yet this country runs around telling everybody how much it believes in democracy. This country has never believed in democracy. Yeah. As we know our own history, we know this country doesn't believe in democracy. How Black people have been treated since they were first brought here. This country's never practiced democracy. The Native Americans who were here when they came. Clear the Europeans never believed in democracy. And so we need to stop allowing for this illusion that's always being thrown in our face about how the U.S. government believes in democracy. And I must talk about one other thing. We have people.
Well, before you do that, and you're on the roll, and I don't want to stop your preaching, Paul, because you're throwing down. I want to let our listeners know that they have been listening to Paul Pumphrey. Paul is someone who was trained in the womb, I feel, to do this work for African people. And I thank you so much for that. Paul is one of the co-founders of the Friends of the Congo. This is Congo Day 2025 at WPFW. We have a special day dedicated to supporting the work that Paul and Maurice, supporting the organization that Paul and Maurice brought into existence 21 years ago. And so we're inviting you to show your love for Paul, show your love for the station, show your love for me by making a contribution, by going online and making a contribution to WPFWFM.org or calling 1-800-222-9739. And the Cash App is $WPFW.org. Is that right, Miyuki?
WPFWFM.org. And it's $WPFWFM.
Yes.
And there's no org, sorry. And then
I'm sorry.
No, I took it with you. And then please put Tony Browder or put Paul Pumphrey or put the Browder file.
WPFW. Yeah.
Well, no, just but family, you just heard Anthony Browder and Paul Pumphrey shine a light on truth you won't find in any textbooks or mainstream media. This is what WPFW is about: reclaiming our history, empowering our people, lifting voices up to the world that often, the corporations, the major corporations, try to silence. We can't do this without you. 202-588-9739. I just want to. I know you were going to take a break then, so I just want to give a short one. And Mr. Pumphrey, you're just amazing.
Well, look, Paul, before you get back into preacher mode and continue, I want to ask you a simple question that I know I can just feel that there's about a dozen or so listeners to this show are saying to themselves, well, you were in a meeting in Haiti at the U.S. Embassy with a embassy official who is more than likely a CIA official. Were you not afraid? How do you deal with the fear, brother? Because you do work that would frighten the average person. How do you overcome the fear and continue doing this work?
Let me give you a little background here. Okay, in 1970, I was a member of an organization called the Black Panther Party in Washington, D.C. On the 4th of July, they raided the office at 17th and U of the Panther office and arrested everybody in the building, which included two 16-month twin boys and an 8-year-old girl. They charged everybody inside the building with disorderly conduct. This is the 4th of July. And they charged us with disorderly conduct on the 4th of July. All right. When I get out of jail, I go to the other office on 18th Street, and the mother of those children was at that office because the father was in the building I was in, and he ended up having to go to the hospital, of course, of being beaten when the police raided the office. All right. So I take her over to pick up the children at 6th and New York Avenue, the station. When we get there, they tell us the children are upstairs in the detective office, so we go get the children. When we come back downstairs, a police officer walks up to me, tells me that he saw me throw a flag, a U.S. flag, in the trash can. I said if I probably had one at that time, I probably would have thrown it in the toilet and flushed it. At that point, he tells me I'm under arrest, and he takes me. He calls his buddies out, and about 8 to 10 of them pulled me into a stairwell and began to beat me and choke me until I was unconscious. Okay. Fortunately, the ACLU lawyer happened to be there to help get the women out of jail that were in that station. And the mother told the lawyer what is happening to me. So he comes back down the hall screaming and hollering, telling the police that they had to stop brutalizing me. And then I ended up being in a civil suit. First, when we went to put the criminal charges of disorderly conduct in both cases, they were thrown out of court. But the civil suit took 5 years before they actually allowed it to go to court. And I found out why on the day I went to the civil suit. And that was that when I went for the civil suit, 6 of the 20 people that were in the office, adults that were in the office that day, dropped out of the civil suit because they could not sue their employer, which meant that even though we had 20 people in that office claiming they were down with us at the Black Panther Party, 6 of them were working for the police department.
Undercover agents.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. And they kept dragging the case so these people could go into other organizations and infiltrate other organizations for 6 years. All right. So that taught me a little bit about that. And at that point, at the end of the 1970, I found out that the FBI had put a contract on me. And so I left and went on the Benson Ramsey Brigade to Cuba and spent 2 months in Cuba, and then debated whether or not they even wanted to come back into the United States. They also went out to my brother. He left and went to Canada, and my brother has never been back in this country since 1971. Okay.
So, Paul, you said that you knew Raul Peck, right?
Yes.
You know Raul, so I need to talk to Raul about doing a film on you, brother. I mean, that can be a powerful scene in a film, brother.
Okay.
Yes.
Well, here's the crazy part. So I leave here because I get recruited by an organization called United Farm Workers Union. And so I go down to Florida to work with the Farm Workers Union, organizing Black workers, mainly Black workers in the Belle Glade area and the Cloisonne area of Florida, cutting sugarcane. Because I learned how to cut sugarcane in Cuba, they felt that I was a great candidate to go down and work with them. And at that point, most of the sugarcane workers that worked in Central Florida came from either Jamaica, Barbados, or St. Lucia to cut the sugarcane, and they treated them like slaves.
Yeah.
And then, of course, that allowed them to depress the wages of the other Black workers that drove the tractors and did the other types of work on those sugarcane fields. But they found out very quickly that I could cut what was called a task, which is 2 rows of sugarcane, a quarter of a mile within 8 hours, and I was doing it in 6. But I really acquired that skill when I was in Cuba, and I never realized how much I built my body up in Cuba, because all I was doing when I was in Cuba, my whole idea was I wanted to do as much as I could to support the Cuban Revolution. And if I'm there to cut sugarcane, let me cut as hard as I can. And I really surprised myself on how well in shape I got myself from cutting sugarcane inside of Cuba. So that was the other connection. Another connection is to how I came up in the struggle. And then while my brother was forced out of this country, he ended up running into people from Southern Africa in Europe. And they asked him, did he know of somebody that could help start an anti-apartheid movement in the United States? And of course, he gave my name. And so I was a co-founder of the Anti-Apartheid Movement USA. And from there, I had very close relationships with the UN representative from SWAPO, from the ANC, from the Patriotic Front, and from the PAC. And so I started setting up speaking engagements, not only in the community, but on college campuses, because students, organizations have access to student activity fees. And so they could pay you to come on the campus to talk about these things. And I was amazed that I would be talking to political science majors who were working on their masters and doctorates and did not know what the word apartheid was. And was shocked when they saw the film that we would show them, showing what was happening under apartheid. But it kind of shows that the United States manipulates information that they give to the university students and to their high school students and to the general public, in which there ends up having a lot of tremendous confusion as to what's really happening in the world that we live in.
Yeah, well, Carter G. Woodson referred to that as miseducation. And the antidote to miseducation is WPFW. I mean, what you talked about, Paul, within the last 40 minutes is an education that, as you rightfully said, an average master's degree or PhD candidate would not know of this information throughout the course of their study. So this is invaluable. This is invaluable. And you know, if you to go back to the CIA for a second, the Central Intelligence Agency, they exist in order to gather intelligence, and then they use that intelligence to either take down nations or to preserve nations. So WPFW is a Central Intelligence Agency. It is a place where you can go to get information that you can't get anywhere else. And it's your responsibility to support this institution so that you can get information and then use that information to ensure that the station exists, to ensure that your family, your community, those institutions and organizations and individuals that you care about exist. Look, folks, I've said it earlier, I'll say it now. This is crunch time. These folk in the White House are Nazis. These folk in the White House believe in white supremacy, and they don't give a damn about white people. Only people with money. Only people with money. So now is the time to take a stand, and you take a stand by putting your money where your head, your heart, and your soul are. Now is the time to make a pledge to WPFW by calling 1-800-222-9739 or going online to WPFW.org or Cash App. I'm going to mess it up, so Miyuki, come in and make sure that I don't mess it up.
Cash App is $WPFWFM. Make sure you put Tony Browder or Browder Files or Paul Pumphrey on. We're getting such an incredible education. We are indebted to these people as a community. We want to thank Margaret, who made a pledge from Valdosta, Georgia. So people are listening to you from
Thank you,
Georgia.
Margaret.
We have a friend from Silver Spring who made a very generous pledge. Olive Beverly from Bowie, Maryland. We appreciate Dr. Browder. an educational, inspirational program. Keep up the good work. And she put her money where her heart, her soul, and her mind is, and she invested to make sure that the next generation can hear that as well. Thank you so much for your web pledge. And we have another friend from Detroit, Michigan, Tony. So you're getting people from across the nation. We'd like to hear from Virginia and some more DC if possible. No one from DC's made a pledge yet, but we're doing great. You only need at this juncture $625, and we will make our goal 202-588-9739. We have 15 minutes remaining, but I know we can get there. 202-588-9739, WPFWFM.org, Cash App, $WPFWFM. The reality is we can't do this without you. WPFW is community powered, listener funded, and driven by love for truth and justice. So do this together. Tony gave a great pitch. I'm going to be quiet because I want to hear more from the both of you.
So Paul, I want you to, because you're the right person who can put this image in our heads. When the CIA official gave the thumbs up for Lumumba to be assassinated, he was brutalized, he was murdered. From what I understand, his body was dismembered and put into a vat of acid, so that there would not be a grave site for souls to come to honor his memory. But I just remember reading, I think it was last year, that in Belgium, before they put Lumumba's body in acid, they extracted some of his teeth and took those teeth back, one tooth, took that tooth back to Belgium, and his offspring, his daughter, I believe, was recently able to retrieve that tooth. Share that story with our listeners so that they'll have an idea of how vicious these animals are. They're not human beings.
Right.
They are subhuman beings. So just listen to this story so that you understand what we have always been up against. And these forces are not going to go away unless we drive them away. Paul?
Okay, basically what he did was he took the tooth as a souvenir, almost like a trophy, like when they go out into the jungle and they kill an animal, and then they take the head of the animal and puts it up on a plaque to put up on their wall.
Or when they would lynch African men and they would castrate them.
Correct.
And collect their body parts and put them on display. That's a part of history.
So this is basically what happened. And with a great deal of international pressure put against Belgium, and Belgium trying to give its so-called liberal appearance, they finally returned that tooth in a casket, no less. One tooth in a whole casket, and had an official ceremony where it was returned back, flown back to the Congo and buried. I assume it's been buried. But anyway, it was taken back to the Congo about a year and a half ago. Things that we also have to keep in mind is this. We talk about Belgium, but let's understand something very clear. When the Berlin Conference took place in 1884, 1885 in Germany, where Europe divided up Africa, and they made it very clear that Africa will only be claimed by European countries. The United States had already explored the Congo and recognized that the Congo had a great deal of wild rubber trees. And this is at the same time that the United States was developing Ford Motor Company and a great demand for rubber. So what the U.S. did was they cut a deal with King Leopold to claim the Congo Basin. And in return, that they would buy all the rubber that King Leopold could produce out of the Congo. So a lot of people talk about what King Leopold did, but what was the motivation for King Leopold doing it anyway? Belgium at that time had no great need for a great deal of rubber. So why were they putting demands on the workers in the Congo that they either had to meet their quota or that they would go to their homes and amputate a limb off a body of one of their family members as an incentive for them never to miss their quota in the future? It was the United States that promoted that. The United States has been involved with the Congo ever since Belgium I mean, no, not Belgium, ever since King Leopold laid claim to the Congo over the Berlin Conference. That's 1884, 1885.
Right.
But yet the media doesn't talk about the role that the U.S. has played. And the same thing is going on today. When you look at the coltan, it's there for your Apples and for your Microsoft and these other electronic companies out of the U.S. When you look at the policy, because like I said again, William Swing, who was the ambassador up until 2001, he then, when they had the election in 2006, he's now been elevated to be in the UN supervising the election in 2006. So the United States footprints is all over the crimes that's taken place in the Congo in the last 100 and some odd years. And we should not forget that we have a responsibility to the people of the Congo, because it's this government in which we live under as the one that has played the biggest role in the misery and the genocide and the expropriation of wealth from the Congo. And that we, in my opinion, have an obligation to make sure that the government in which we live under stop carrying out these vicious crimes against the people of the Congo. Yes, no question about Uganda and Rwanda going into the Congo and supporting M23. No question they're there. But you have to ask the question, how many guns does Uganda and Rwanda make? How many rocket launchers do they make? Where's all this military equipment coming from? It's coming from the United States and from Europe. And of course, the NATO nations is led by the United States. And so when you sit back and you look at countries, they always want to highlight Rwanda and how developed Rwanda is. Well, the question one must ask, how is it that Rwanda has a coltan refinery plant when virtually has no coltan inside of Rwanda? Where's the coltan coming from? It's coming from the Congo. How are the weapons getting to M23? When you're looking at the central part of the Congo, there's no ocean where they can get it off of a ship. The only way they can get those weapons is across the border from Uganda and from Rwanda. Okay, and who's sending the weapons there? We have a video on our website called Crisis in the Congo. And in the middle of that video, we asked some members of the State Department that worked in the embassy in Rwanda. And the statement they made was they didn't understand why, after the Rwandan war was over with, the United States was constantly flying in weapons to Rwanda. Because the real purpose of the Rwandan genocide, basically orchestrated by the United States, was to have a government that would agree in invading the Congo. The previous government in Rwanda had refused to be a part of an invasion inside of the Congo. And so the United States
they were overthrown.
Used the Tutsis who lived in Uganda. Paul Kagame spent more years living in Uganda than he has in Rwanda. And yet,
so Paul, listen,
yes.
we're at our limit. We've run out of time, but I can talk to you forever. I can go on with you forever. But you mentioned something very important that I don't want to get away from us. You mentioned a film that's available on your website. So please, please, please give us the website so that people can see the film and feel your spirit, feel your compassion, and find some way that they can get involved and support Friends of the Congo.
Okay.
What's the website, please?
The website is friendsofthecongo.org. And all you have to do is then look under the information we have there, and they will show you how to go to where our films are. And it's called Crisis in the Congo, but you also can go to YouTube. The same video is on YouTube. It's called Crisis in the Congo.
Crisis in the Congo. Yeah, we had featured Maurice last Wednesday as part of our Wednesday activity, and he mentioned that there was going to be a film series in New York this week. So I assume that's part of the films that are being shown. Absolutely.
Well, what we're doing is that there are a number of filmmakers in the Congo that we work with, because they are training
Great.
young people how to document what is going on in their country. And so we
Fantastic.
take advantage of working with them and having them during Congo Week to bring their films and highlight their films right here in the United States. And so we have what's called Congo in Harlem, and it takes place
Mhm.
the third week of October every year. And this has grown, and they do it really out of a movie house. So they go and show their film, and then afterwards, the producers of the film have a question and answer period and answer questions to people who may be asking questions about what they saw in the film.
Okay. Well, look, Paul Pumphrey has been my guest for this hour. Paul, I thank you so much. I'm glad that Katia reconnected us. I'm going to keep your telephone number and I'm going to have you back because we've got many more things that we could talk about. I'm so happy to see you, brother. I've missed you dearly. And again, please give us your mother's name so that we can honor her as we close out this show.
Okay, my mother's name was Mildred Adams Pumphrey, Pumphry.
And we're going to have
Okay.
that movie come out soon, both featuring your mother sowing the seeds of consciousness and you spreading those, and you being the fruit of that root and growing with all that. You all have done a tremendous service to the community. We want to thank so much Sabu from Washington, D.C., who made a pledge of support. Ali Barbara in District Heights, Maryland, thank you so much. Dr. James Jackson in Fort Washington, Maryland, thank you so much. And a friend in Washington, D.C. Folks, we're only $415 short from the goal. We can get there with your help. Don't forget that every dollar fuels WPFW. Go to WPFW FM. Every dollar keeps the microphone open for knowledge, for culture, for resistance. So don't wait. Make your pledge now. Make sure that Tony goes out here and we do Paul Pumphrey proud. 202-588-9739. I'm serious. I want to see the movie. Tony's right. We have to see the movie, Mr. Pumphrey. So please, you got it going?
One other thing, and that is that I will also personally, I will contribute $100 to the show.
Oh, thank you so much.
Thank you, my brother.
Caliber of guests. Thank you so much for helping WPFW. Thank you.
So for those of you all who are just glued to your radio and can't dig into your wallet or can't pick up your telephone and can't type in the computer, you can always go online and make a pledge to WPFW after the show is over. You can always go to Cash App, make a contribution after the show is over. And please do that. Please give as my guest Paul is giving. Please give as Miyuki constantly gives. Please give as Katia gives. Please give as I give and all these other programmers. So the rest of this day is going to be filled with programs. We've got Maurice Carney is going to be on from 6 to 7 with Jackie Lukeman. He'll be back on from 8 to 10 with Donald Temple. Jordan Struckwood has some guests who are going to play some music and talk about the Congo. Congo. As Frantz Fanon said, the fate of us all is at stake in the Congo. So we need you all to do your part. Let the spirit of the Congo live within you, because America is the key. African Americans are the key to Congo and the rest of Africa and the world being free. Do your part, folks. It's now or never. Do your part. So thank you all so much for listening to our show. And yes, Miyuki, you want to add something?
Yeah,
Please jump in.
I just want to let you know that Kim sent you a Cash App, as did Heather, as did Giselle, as did Michelle, as did Gloria, as did Stacy. The women stood up and have given you
my
lots of Cash Apps. I'm pretty sure you will go over goal if people continue to pledge. Thank you all so much. Please continue to listen to this this critical information. This education is so important, and that's part of what WPFW does. Thank you both so much. What a brilliant conversation. So much knowledge. Thank you for sharing everything.
All right, Cleo, take us out. I'll see you all next week. It's all about love. Love you all to life. Peace.
Gotta make some beauty. Have mercy. Listen to me, y'all.
Hey, thank you, Miyuki. I could not have done it without you. And Brother Paul.
You did great. The two of you, I felt like I was intruding. It was such
come on, please.
But it was a fascinating discussion. I know that people were just like, be quiet, Miyuki, because we'll do it. We'll give you money. I mean, the money kept coming in because they were, shut up, Miyuki, so we can hear Mr. Perfect talk. It was great. So you're going to do an overtime thing now? I'll get out of your way.
Oh, well, I hadn't thought about that. I don't know how much time you have, Paul. So, Paul, if you want to now, if you have something else you want to talk about, we can continue this discussion, and I will air the entire interview on our YouTube channel. I'll give you a copy of the link, and you're free to share it and do whatever you want to do with it. So, if you want to give me, say, another 15 minutes or so to talk about whatever you want to talk about with regards to the Congo, with regards to your work, with regards to what you want people to do, because it's good to know this, but it's even more important to do something with what you know. So.
Okay.
Give us some marching orders as we move into overdrive. Thank you so much for that suggestion, General. I salute you.
I'll listen to it later. I'll let y'all go. Thank you so, so much. You're
Okay, you're welcome, my dear. Thank you.
Thank
you
you.
may go. You may go. You went
Peace.
over.
All right, thank you. So yeah, Paul, as I said at the top of this show, I knew you through Ambrose, and I've always had the deepest admiration and respect for Ambrose because his spirit was similar to yours. And so it's a pleasure to be able to have you on my show and to chop it up with you. It's like, we're both in the presence of Ambrose. I feel his energy, man. So
Yes,
thank you
yes.
for this. And I'd love for you to take this time where we don't have pressures of making a pledge amount, for you to just talk about what's on your heart and give a message to the people that you want them to respond to. The floor is yours, my brother.
Okay, well, a couple of things. I think that there's some very important things happening in Africa today that gives me great hope.
Mm,
When I look at what's going
good.
on in the Sahel in Africa,
Yes.
when I look at what's going on in Botswana and Namibia, um, when I look at the fact of they're setting examples of what Africa, the direction Africa should be going into. And let me explain what I mean by that. Before World War II, Africa supplied the food to most of Europe. That's when they had their standing armies in those different countries in Africa, in the
Mm,
colonies in Africa. But because so many of the soldiers lost their lives from Europe and the need to rebuild after the destruction of the war, they had to bring those soldiers home out of Africa, out of Asia, out of even Central America and the Caribbean. And so they had to now flip the script of how they're going to do it. So what the decision was, let's make these countries dependent on Europe for food, dependent on the United
mm,
States for food, depending on Canada for food. Now, understand what that means. Here's countries that have warm weather year round, and they got to import food from countries that can only grow foods 5 and 6 months a year.
mm,
But that's exactly what they had. And then they also did something else. For the crops that had to be tropically grown, like cocoa, like coffee, that they would buy those crops as raw products, transport them to Europe, United States, Canada, process them into finished products, and then sell them for multiple times more valuable than they bought them for. Now, let me give you a good example. And the reason why I know a little bit about this is because I am a part owner of a chocolate company. Okay.
mhm,
We make premium chocolate out of the Dominican Republic. 22 tons of cocoa. Basically, that's a shipping container load. Basically sells for about $47,800. But if they took that same cocoa and turned it into premium chocolate and sold it, the price would be around $2.3 million. So when you look at a country like Ghana that produces 20% of all the cocoa in the world, and they're not making their own premium chocolate, they're selling their cocoa as cocoa. They're literally losing billions upon billions of dollars that could be used to develop itself as a country. And one of the problems is that when they devalue the agriculture production in these countries in Africa and the Caribbean, etc., the result is the young people see their mothers and fathers working like crazy and getting nothing in return for it. They leave the countryside and move to the city. You
mhm,
can't grow crops on concrete and asphalt. So that makes those countries more dependent upon importing food from Europe and the United States. And the United States and Europe use food as a weapon to force governments to do what they want, to sell them the gold that they want, to sell them the copper that they want, to sell them the bauxite that they use to make the aluminum from, to sell them the raw materials at a dirt cheap price, so that in fact the wealth gets transferred from Africa to Europe, to Canada, to the United States, to Australia, etc. And so one of the things we here in this country, we're here where we can learn a bit of technology. For those of us old enough, we can remember when Ghana had an airlines that used to fly back and forth into the United States. Nigeria had airlines that used to fly back and forth into the United States. South Africa had an airline that used to fly back and forth into the United States. But those countries, most of those countries today, those airlines no longer exist.
Right.
Why is it that they don't exist? For a couple of reasons. One, in the United States, any aircraft flying inside the United States must have their maintenance done by an FAA certified mechanic or European certified aviation certified mechanic or Canadian aviation certified mechanic. Now, here's a good secret. Right here in Washington, D.C., University of District of Columbia has a community college that trains people how to become FAA certified mechanics. What does that mean? That means you got a job that could be paying you $70,000 a year as a mechanic. And that they're talking about a shortage of about 30,000 airline mechanics over the next 10 to 15 years, which means that if you pass the course and you get your license, you got a gateway to a job that can support you and a family. Okay? But not only that, if you're working for the airlines give you and your family permission to fly anywhere that airline fly as on standby, and all you pay for is the taxes on the ticket. So you got a ticket that might have cost you $800, you're paying $40 or $50 for an $800 ticket. At the same time, for those who are looking at wanting to go back to Africa, if you got that license goes with you. That means any airlines, European, US, or African, that flies through that country are going to hire a licensed mechanic to be on call just in case something may go wrong with that aircraft.
So Paul, look, obviously, you've given this situation a lot of thought. You've been to Africa, you've been throughout the Caribbean, you've lived long enough to see the problems in the world and to have thought about some solutions to those problems. So just listening to you talk about this one example with UDC, Aviation Mechanics School, what other suggestions, what other advice would you give to a young African-American today as to how they can better prepare themselves for the future?
Well, here's my point. There are a lot of people talking about they want to move back to Africa. And my suggestion is if you want to move back to Africa, don't go back empty-handed.
Right.
Okay.
Come with the skill.
Acquire a skill that you can easily acquire here in the United States and take that with you. So if you're going to move to Ghana, learn how to make premium chocolate here. And then go back to Ghana. And instead of allowing Ghana to sell their cocoa dirt cheap out of the country, you start making the premium chocolate in Ghana. All right. Where Ghana can go from making $2 billion a year off of its cocoa to making about $35 to $40 billion a year off of its cocoa. That's a game changer. That's a game changer, because what would happen is young people will be heading back out to the cocoa farms that their parents have, okay, to in fact produce more cocoa. Again, bringing resources back to Africa. Don't go to Africa empty-handed.
Sure.
Go with a license knowing how to do airline maintenance and take that back with you. Because Ghana lost its aircraft because they had a company in Italy doing its safety checks. They had the license. And when they said Ghana was behind in their payments, they kept the planes.
That's how Ghana Airlines
Okay,
went out of
they
business,
kept
huh?
the planes.
They kept the planes.
All
Lord
right,
have mercy.
and the fact is, if you were in Ghana, you would even have Air France and
Mm-hmm.
British Airways hiring you to be on call in case their aircraft has a problem when they land inside of Ghana. Why
Mm-hmm.
is that? Because the airline is responsible for their passenger. If they can't get their passenger on their
Absolutely.
scheduled flight to their location on time, they got to house them and feed them. You know how much
Absolutely.
money they would lose?
Mm-hmm.
Man, if they had to sit back and wait for an airline mechanic to come from France or Great Britain down to Ghana, that's a whole day lost that you had
So,
to
so,
support 300 or 400 people.
so, brother, one of the other things that I remember about you, and you're bringing that up now as we're talking, is that you also have great business sense, right? So, how did you cultivate this interest in a variety of businesses? You say you're part owner of a high-end cocoa manufacturing company.
May I say
What?
one thing about that cocoa company?
Of course,
Okay.
definitely.
You can go and you can Google National Geographic 2016 chocolate competition. They competed over 500 chocolate companies from around the world.
Uh-huh.
Okay. And then they made their top 10 list. Our company was the only company from the United States to make their top 10 list.
All right, so brother, look, what is the name of your company? You got to take it back.
Spagbola.
Say it
It's called
again.
Spagbola. Spagnola.
So what does that name mean? What does that
Well,
word
you
mean?
know, the island of Dominican Republic and Haiti is called Hispaniola.
Yeah.
And so we took the spag from there. And so we call it Spagbola. We have spag in bola, okay? But we pronounce it just as Spagbola.
Got it.
All
Got it.
right. Now, so my point is we have chocolate candy bars, okay?
Yeah.
That is 80% cocoa, selling for over $15 a candy bar. And we had people, when
Mm-hmm.
we had a shop up in Gaithersburg, we had people traveling from Virginia to Gaithersburg to buy 10 and 15 bars at a time because they said once their children got to eating our chocolate, they didn't want any other type of chocolate. You imagine somebody
You put
traveling
Nestle's to
30
shame, huh?
miles to spend $150 on chocolate.
Okay. All right.
All right. And so these are the kind of things, because when you think about it, what are the ingredients inside of chocolate? Sugar, where does it grow? Same place the cocoa does.
True.
Passion
True.
fruit, where does it grow? Mangoes, coconuts, almonds, you know, all the ingredients is right there in Ghana. It's
Yeah.
right there in the Ivory Coast. Why are they selling it as raw material to somebody else to make all the money?
Mm-hmm. So I assume you've had conversations with Africans in Ghana and Ivory Coast about these ideas. How were your ideas received?
We must be very clear. The reason why Europe stays as wealthy as it does today, the reason why the United States stays as wealthy as they do today, and the reason why they have all these different coups d'etats in Africa, okay, the Caribbean, Central America, and South America, is very simple. Europe and the United States realize that if Africa ever processed its own wealth, that they would be bankrupt.
Hmm. Sure.
So they highly invested in making sure that if you have an election, they pick who the president is. They pick who the prime minister is.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and since they're quote unquote the UN supervisors, like I said, they had this guy who was a criminal being supervisor over an election in the Congo.
Exactly.
All right. So it means for us to pay attention to what's happening in Burkina Faso. Pay attention to what's happening in Niger. Pay attention to what's happening in Mali. Pay attention to what's happening in Botswana and Namibia. And you will see that these countries are now saying enough is enough. And we're no longer going to be importing things that we don't need to import. For example, in Burkina Faso, during the rainy season, they produce over twice as many tomatoes as they could consume.
Mm.
The problem was they didn't have the ability to can their
To get them to
tomatoes.
market. Yeah, to get them to market. Yeah.
All right. And so they were shipping their tomatoes up to France. France was canning it, shipping it back down to them, and selling it to them at a high price. So what did the government do over there in Burkina Faso? They worked out a deal to build their own tomato paste plant.
Yeah.
So now, though they are producing enough tomato paste for the community in Burkina Faso, but they have even extra tomato paste to sell to neighboring countries.
Mm.
All right, they're keeping the wealth inside their country
For sure.
rather than shipping their wealth out of the country. You look at Nigeria. Nigeria, up until recently, exported all their oil out of the country. Now, just think about it. You're going to now take your crude oil at a dirt cheap price and sell it to Europe, which means now you got to pay to have it shipped up to Europe, processed in Europe, and then shipped back down to you. And now you're going to have to pay the price of the shipping up to Europe and back, plus whatever profit they want to make. That's depleting the wealth of your country.
Yeah.
You know, what we have to recognize is the reason why the Europe, United States, and Canada after World War II were able to develop and generate the wealth that they were able to develop because they processed the raw materials that came from wherever. When you look at South Africa and De Beers right now have tons of diamonds that they keep up in Great Britain. And they don't want to put it out on the market because if they did, they would depress the cost of diamonds. So they're very selective. And I'll give you another film. It's called The Diamond Empire. You can find it on YouTube. And it goes into a great deal in showing how De Beers has monopolized the whole diamond industry to keep the wealth in the hands of the Oppenheimers. You know, we need to study these things. We need to understand. If I'm going to move to Africa, my question should be, is what can I learn to take with me so that I can help Africa move forward in the 21st century? You know.
So Paul, this is where what I want to do because I've got to run now. I got to end this interview, but I want to do this. As I mentioned during the show, we had Maurice speak just last week as part of our Wisdom Wednesday monthly series. I want to bring you on next year. I'll put you in contact with Sister Adjua, who does our scheduling for Wisdom Wednesdays. I want to bring you on, and I want you to talk about these issues. What can African Americans do? What skills do we need to develop in order to bring those skills to Africa, to help develop Africa? And I'd like for you to think about a 15 to 30-year plan, right? So we're looking at 1 to 2 generations of ideas that can develop wealth and power here in the United States that can help the continent of Africa, so that we can start putting some ideas out here to motivate some young folk to start doing some things differently with their lives. Does that sound feasible to you?
Very much so. It's like I said, if they did nothing but just the aviation part.
Sure.
If they did just the aviation part, they would actually transfer billions of dollars back into Africa.
Fantastic.
Stop and think of how many people are traveling from Africa to Europe and to the United States and Canada, and how many people from the United States and Canada and Europe is traveling to Africa. Why should Europe, the United States, and Canada have basically the only airlines flying in and out of Africa?
Absolutely.
The only other airline is flying in and out of Africa is Ethiopia.
Sure. Yeah, they're the only survivors. Absolutely.
Okay. I mean, even South African Airlines is in bankruptcy, in which Ethiopia is running it.
Okay.
All right. And so this needs not to happen. We remember one time the Congo had its own airlines. Ghana had its own airlines. Nigeria had its own airlines. And then these airlines companies in Europe and United States and Canada said, we don't want the competition.
Exactly.
You know, I was talking to a woman one time from Kenya, and she was telling me about how Kenya had its own airlines. And I said, no, they don't. She said, oh, yes, they do. I said, no, they don't. She said, what do you mean they don't have it? I said, they're using KLM's aircraft. They're leasing their aircraft from KLM. They use Kenya's name on it, but the
Mm-hmm.
aircraft and the big money is made by KLM. Oh,
Got
that's not true. I said, okay. So one day she was living here in Silver Spring area. Some officials from the Kenyan Airlines was in Washington D.C. to do business deal or whatever. They called her up and they said they got tired of eating U.S. food. And they want to eat Kenyan food. Could they come to our house and have dinner? And she invited them over. Then she called me up to prove her point, to have me come over there so they could tell me that the airlines was owned and run by Kenya. So I get there, she's still in the kitchen working, so I don't talk about the airlines until she finished and then she's serving the food to everybody. And I said, okay, now let me ask you a question. Who owns your aircraft? And they said, KLM. You should have seen the look on her face
Mm-hmm.
because she had seen Kenya pilots
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
flying the planes, but they
Mm-hmm.
were leasing the planes from KLM.
She had no idea. And
She had no idea.
most folk have no idea.
Right. And they painted they
Of
painted King
course.
Airlines on
Of
the side of
course.
the plane and all that, but the money was going to
Yeah, you can put
KLM.
your name on anything. It doesn't mean that you own it.
Right. And that you're getting the bulk of the money from it.
Exactly, exactly. Well, look, Paul, this has been great, man. I have your number. I'm gonna reach out to you, and yeah, I also have your email address. So I will connect you to Sister Adjua,
Uh-huh.
and make sure we get you on the schedule for Wisdom Wednesday next year. And I want to have you back on the show so that we can flesh out some more of these concepts and ideas, brother. You're a gem. You're a jewel, a valuable commodity to our community, and we need to hear more from you. And if I can give you a platform to
Right.
share what you're doing with more, I'll be more than happy to do it.
Well, like I said, if we did nothing but just dealt with the cocoa alone, we're talking about $200 billion.
Well,
$200 billion.
so
And see,
look,
here's the most important thing about that.
yeah.
If you buy my gold, you now have my gold. I don't have it anymore. If you buy my chocolate, you got manure. I had to come back to me and get some more chocolate.
We're gonna do a show on chocolate, brother.
Uh-huh.
You convinced me. We're gonna do a show on chocolate because that's just most folk didn't know or don't know that the cocoa comes from Africa. Most folk don't know that. They love chocolate and they
Actually,
think
no. Cocoa originated in the
it's
Americas.
in South America. Was it South America? Cacao,
Yes.
was it?
Yeah, it was
cacao.
in Central America and South
Yeah,
America
cacao.
was
Mhm.
where it began. Okay.
Yes.
And the Europeans who colonized it fell in love with it and brought it back to Europe. And they said it's a lot closer to go to Africa than to
Got
go
it.
over to South America to get the cocoa. So they
Got it.
started planting it in their plantations in West Africa.
Okay. Well, look,
That's what happened.
I mean, look, so that's it. We're gonna do a show. I'm gonna have you back on my show on PFW before the end of the year.
Okay.
And we're gonna do a show on chocolate, on cocoa, all right, and just talk about that and use that as a platform to talk about food, to talk about business and global economies, man, and build out from there. All right.
Well, I'll tell you one other thing before you go. In Ghana, they have what's called tiger nuts.
Uh-huh.
Okay. It's actually a part of the potato family. It's grown
Okay.
like peanuts underground. All
Mhm.
right. Guess what tiger nuts do for you? It addresses your prostate problems.
I remember, there was a brother. I went to Ghana 2 years ago, and there was a brother here who's recovering from prostate cancer, and he asked me specifically to bring that product back for
Right.
him. Matter of fact, the sister met me at the airport with a bag of those, and okay, I get it.
Okay. And
I
so
get it.
when you look at prostate cancer in the Black community,
Yes,
it's out of
indeed,
control.
it is.
So here's an opportunity to bring a product that is grown in Africa. See, if you try to buy tiger nuts over Amazon, they're going to give it to you from Spain.
Mm,
And the reason why they're in Spain is because of the Moors were in Spain.
okay.
And the Moors was growing tiger nuts in Spain. Okay, that's how Spain became, familiar with tiger nuts.
Is the product, the tiger nuts that come from Spain, are they different in quality?
No, they're basically again, these were tiger nuts that came out of Africa
Got it.
that
Okay,
was
so
brought to
genetically
Spain,
it's the
and
same
now Spain
material.
has cultivated them and the whole 9 yards. But the
Okay,
reality is, it's a plant that started in West Africa.
got it. Well, the reason I'm asking is that I've got a dear friend who um, had prostate cancer, had his prostate removed, and now he's dealing with issues where his PSA is rising. Doctors don't know why, and they want him to do radiation. So, if possible, I can suggest that he try some of that and see if that
Well,
helps
I'll
his
give you a
condition.
suggestion. Right
Yes,
here on
sir.
New Hampshire Avenue, right above University Boulevard, going towards DC, there's
Mm-hmm.
a little shopping center,
Mm-hmm.
and they have a store there called the Red Apple.
I know it's right down the street from me off on Riggs Road. I know exactly where it
Right.
is.
The Red Apple sells tiger nuts
I'll get some
from
there.
Africa.
Okay. I
From
would go.
Africa.
I would go
Okay.
there and get
So
some.
let's go in the store and ask the close, and they'll tell you where to go back to get the
Okay,
tiger nuts.
tag nuts. Got it.
Right.
All right, man. Thank you, brother. You are a lifesaver. You are a joy. I'm so happy to reconnect with you.
Well, I find it an honor to be able to be on the show with you because the most important part of the show is the person with the right questions.
True.
Okay.
Mhm.
And I have great faith in you presenting the right questions.
Well, good. Well, that's why, initially, I was supposed to have another guest on the show before I found out about the Congo Day.
Right.
And so initially, there was a brother from Morehouse who was supposed to be the guest. And then,
Okay.
and I knew him from Morehouse, but then he had a schedule conflict. And when Katia told me that you were going to be the guest, I said, well, that's perfect. That's perfect. So everything happens for a reason. There are no
Right.
coincidences, and we're gonna stay connected. And I would love to do some work with you, some programs with you in the future, brother. So I'm so happy to have you back in my life again. And
Right. Because
uh,
I know you do a lot of stuff about what's happening in Egypt, but someone needs to start doing the same thing about what's happening in the Sahel.
well,
Get the blueprint of where Africa needs to go.
so
Because
look here.
young people all over Africa is paying attention to
All
what's
right.
happening in the Sahel.
So look, this is what I would like for you to help me to do. I am stepping back from Africa, from Egypt specifically. I'm doing my last study tours to Egypt next year. We finish our excavation, and I want to shift my attention. And it makes sense for me to shift my attention to West Africa. So what's happening in Sahel is crucial to Africa and to African Americans. So if you can help me shape a program, shape an agenda, then I would love to be able to make that a future platform for me and others to discuss. So
Okay. My
I,
suggestion would be also whenever you get a chance, go to YouTube and type in Bikini Faso.
oh yeah. I
They
mean,
must have about they must have about 300 videos
yeah,
on Bikini Faso.
I'm aware of the basics, but my thing is my time is so crunched right
Yeah,
now
I
that I don't
understand.
have the time to invest in that. So I'm relying on people who have the
Okay,
expertise, such
I
as
understand.
yourself, and I'll bring you on as a subject matter expert, and you can tell us what to do. Because this is the thing. There's not enough time for everybody to do everything that needs to be done.
Correct.
But if we get the experts, and if we get people we can trust,
Right.
and have you tell us what to do, when, where, and how, then we all can move together. We all don't have to do the same thing
Very good.
in
Very
order
good.
to achieve
No
the same
problem. No
goal.
problem.
All right. All right, brother. Well, look, I got to go fix dinner for my grandson. So I thank you so much for giving me an extra 30
Well, it was
minutes
great
of your
being with you.
time. All
It
right.
was great being
And
with you.
once I post this, I'll send you the link and feel free to share it and use it any way that you like. Okay.
All right. Thank you very much.
All right. Thank you, brother. All the best to you. Take
Peace
care.
to you, brother.
All right. Peace.
Take care now.
Uh-huh.